Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome to the COVID-19 Digital Event Series, If You Knew Then, What You Know Now, sharing and assessing 1 year of remote and online learning. Thank you everyone for joining us. We're so happy you're here with us and joining us after the last year that we've had. And as I mentioned, this is part of the COVID-19 series, and it's a follow-up to 2 events that we did in April and in May of 2020. So let's see where we are today. So my name is Sean Gleason. I'll be serving as the moderator for the session today, along with my co-moderator, Carl Schneider, who I'll introduce in a minute. I am an associate professor and assistant dean for distance degrees and programs at the University of Colorado in the USA. Within FIP, I also work as a global lead in the Workforce Development Hub, serving our development goal #1, academic capacity. And then, of course, I'm also a part of the academic pharmacy section, and happy to be here today. I'm even more happy to introduce, as I mentioned a few seconds ago, my co-moderator, Dr. Carl Schneider. Dr. Schneider serves as a senior lecturer in pharmacy practice at the University of Sydney in Sydney, Australia. He is an academic, an educator, a pharmacist, and I learned through this series also a nurse with research interests focusing on the quality use of medicines. And I am so happy to have him with us. He has served as a great friend and a visionary with this session. Many of you may know Dr. Schneider as he serves on the executive committee of the academic pharmacy section and is a member of the FIP Digital Technology Forum. I am also extremely pleased to introduce this screen full of partners that we have joining us today. You'll see here a list of collaborators who have worked just so hard and so creatively over the last several weeks to put this session together. Some names you'll recognize from our sessions last year. On the left-hand side of the screen are a lot of the faculty members who put together all of our sessions last year and are serving to follow up and provide really the perspective and wisdom for us all over the last year. And then really getting to the one FIP idea, we have a wide variety of students and young pharmacists who have joined us. We have two students who were with us last year, Emanuela Nezaribe and Priscilla Owusu-Mensah. From KNUST. They were here last year, but a big congratulations to Ella, who is now in our young pharmacist group. With her, we also have 2 other young pharmacists, Anisha and Ikwebaum, and then a variety of students joining us from schools all over the world, from University of Nottingham, Monash in Australia, and also Malaysia. So a big welcome and a big thank you to our panelists for joining us and really for all of the, like I said, the perspective and vision that they've provided for this session today. A few housekeeping announcements regarding this webinar. It is being recorded and live streamed via YouTube. It will also be available on the website www.fip.org. You may ask questions using the question box provided, and of course, you are welcome to provide feedback to webinars@fip.org. To become a member of FIP, please see the link there, fip.org/membership registration. So then really just a big thank you to so many groups within the FIP organization. It is truly a collaborative effort of many groups within FIP. As I mentioned earlier, the COVID-19 digital events programming team, and especially a big thank you to Mila Turkenberg, who has been so helpful in navigating all of our emails and getting this set up for us. Also representing us today are the Workforce Development Hub, the Academic Pharmacy Section, AIM, the Young Pharmacist Group, and the International Pharmacist Student Federation. So truly a 1 FIP event. So some learning objectives for the session. And the one thing I'm just going to start off by sharing the learning objectives is really the main objective for today's session is all about sharing and learning from each other. So at the end, we hope you'll be able to participate in the sharing, assessment, and discussion of global perspectives on remote and online learning through our pre and in-session polling. And I'll share a little bit more about the pre-session polling on the next slide. We also hope that you'll be able to share and discuss our past year's remote and online education and assessment over the last year, noting tips, challenges, and rewards, and really what remaining questions we have. And then along the way to provide some innovative ideas to help us all move forward. So a little outline for our session today is, really the background. We'll talk first about the background, the idea for this, and the goals. And I'll let Dr. Schneider talk about that when he takes over. But as I mentioned earlier, it is really all about sharing and learning from you. We're also going to be sharing the pre-session survey results. And with that, I just want to say a big thank you to each and every one of you. We had over 200 participants, registrants share some very valuable information. And I think you'll see a lot of the information that we share today has made its way to our slides. We did information up to Saturday's events. You can imagine we had to start building our slides. So thank you to everyone, though we did take a peek from up until yesterday. We'll provide a summary of the themes that we saw through those 200 plus results. We'll divide it by faculty and by students, and then you'll see represented throughout the session different regions from across the world are really represented. We'll have some discussion. We have a lot of information, so we'll try to keep discussion a little brief, but as much as possible, because again, it's all about learning from each other. Because we did see some themes come out of the results of the pre-session survey, we will take a deeper dive, as I say, into some of those key topics, whether that be educational methods, different opportunities, and really what the future looks for us all. And one of the ways that we're going to be doing that within the session is some additional polling. So one of the things I will ask you to do right now is, if you have available a smartphone, please get that ready, because the polling is going to be done by a platform called Poll Everywhere. Some of you may know it. I learned it over the last day or two, and it's a very interactive and I think a fun way of learning and sharing with each other. So with that, I am going to hand over the moderation to Dr. Schneider.
Thank you so much. And it's an absolute pleasure to be here this evening from Sydney, Australia, and seeing so many people attending. And I just want to reiterate what Sean mentioned. We are truly grateful for the tremendous response from the community, because that's what we see ourselves as, a community here, a community of practice. With over 200 responses, not just 1 or 2 word answers, really telling us a lot about what you'd wish you had known 1 year ago. So thank you for your generosity in sharing it with everybody. And I think the overall theme in this question was, we saw a rising to the challenge. That everybody rose to the challenge and accepted the challenge that was on us for our students. And the vast majority of us overcame these challenges, and they did that through innovative ways, often through the use with technology, which you'll see a little bit more of as this webinar unfolds. So this webinar is to both celebrate our wins, as well as to look forward to what comes next. Next slide, please. So if we look at the overall survey results from what you've told us, these are the general thoughts from faculty and students. So we found both a pro in that students were more willing to share their thoughts in an online or should I say remote format, when they were virtually attending a session, they felt that some students felt that they were able to share their thoughts in that manner, in that format. Although conversely, some people was often more faculty members were saying that there was potentially reduced engagement as a result of a virtual mode of education, online or remote. A really nice thing was that some people mentioned that it led to more independent thinking. Although some people said that it works better for smart students, and perhaps that's more so for independent learners. And they suggested that students were not at the same level as with prior education, may not be at the same level. And so the challenges that we have to overcome any deficiencies in the mode of delivery, use of remote or online educational modes. The advantage is that it reaches more learners, it connects students and faculty members across remote locations. And there's some serendipitous moments where you could beam in somebody, international speakers, into the classroom, which there was no way you'd be able to do that face-to-face. However, with that, technology can also come challenges as a result of a limited bandwidth and connection difficulties, at which point I want to give a shout out that Sunford, and I apologize for any mention of pronunciation of any names, but Sunford Muchindu of Godsway Siso Al Hassan has mentioned that it had not been fair to all due to that bandwidth connectivity issue. However, overall, it's been fun for many students, they mentioned, and there's been many opportunities to learn. That said, a con more so for academics was that can be challenges to academic integrity, and there needs to be solutions to how that might be achieved. It can also be Kanchana Dusa from Anwarul Ulum, COP in India, mentioned cost effectiveness of online education, and it bridges gaps between faculty and students. However, it can be additional time required. I think many people spent sleepless nights, many educators spent sleepless nights in the early months of 2020 trying to convert a lot of their content and material to online format. But once that's been done, this content increases equity in freedom of access. In fact, Nurhanya Jaji from the Philippine Pharmacists Association said that in the old days, one went to the library to study, but now we have the immense resources of the internet and Google. Next slide, please. Thank you. So, if we look at more detailed student results, the first of all, I think is a wonderful comment is it is feasible. It is possible. And so many of you showed that in your responses 1 year on. One quote is, "This mode of education is comfortable and gives more opportunity to learn different topics." A third quote is, "As a student, I wish I knew a year ago that virtual learning could offer a great deal of opportunities to interact with people." So these positive quotes as a takeaway means that potentially in future, their online or remote education might become something that they would like to see more of in the future. And that's something we need to think of as academics and educators. They say it's good that free online education is available, and wish had known more about how virtual clerkships or clinical placements would work. So some students underwent virtual placement, experiential education, and they wanted to know a little bit more about that before they went on and conducted those activities. Next slide, please. When we look at the faculty-specific feedback from the survey, there was a lot more about how one might be able to deliver remote and online education. They wanted to know more about the technical skills required. These range from engagement methods, how to engage in a remote or online classroom. And one of the key takeaways was the importance of connection and how to create connections in this format. There was a cluster of results around teaching methods, how to teach in remote and online education, which we'll talk a little bit more about later as we go from our panelists, active methods, and finally assessment methods, how one might assess over a remote or online connection. Next slide, please. Finally, when we look specifically at technology, that seemed to be a very large number of results came through on the various technological platforms that are available to deliver education now. So, well, all of you are zooming in. Obviously, Zoom has become, or Microsoft Teams or alternative conferencing software has really come to the fore in the last 12 to 15 months. 18 months. Collaborative software such as Blackboard Collaboration, Cisco WebEx, and even free software such as Google Docs have been used for collaboration. So I would like to have a shout out to Nyok Su from Monash, mentioned using Google Docs and understanding all the features that Google Docs allow them to collaborate. And Delina, I'm not sure about this one, Shafaj from Albanian University talked about whiteboards and Microsoft Teams as being very useful technologies to create lesson material as well as teach. So many of us wish we had more experience in these technologies before the situation demanded that we had to rapidly move online. So I would like to hand over in the next slide to a young pharmacist view. So Ella Zeribi, if you could tell us your story, please.
For handing over to me. So hello everyone. I'm Dr. Emanuela Nzeribe. So I'll just be sharing my opinion or my story as to what happened and what I wish I had known 1 year ago. So as a recent graduate, I actually wished that last year I wasn't so worried about my final exams because there was a lot of anxiety, basically because we were told that we had to learn and then also write our exams in the via online, and we hadn't done that before. So looking back right now, I wish I wasn't so worried and so anxious. I mean, I've been able to graduate, and that is a good thing. And also another thing that also worried me so much looking back right now is the fact that I wasn't so as interactive as I should have been over the past year, because it was also necessary, or I wish I had known and understood the need to be so much more with the faculty members. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Ella. Thank you for sharing that. And I think you really touched on a a big theme of today and really the past year for us all. And that's really all about connection and engagement. And Ella, I'm right there with you on not having understood the importance of interaction with faculty. I'll raise my hand and say I interacted very little with my faculty when I was a student. So it is important. And in this past year, we'll learn from our students how it has become even more important. And so with that, I want to go on to really the next set of information that we want to share with you. And as I mentioned earlier, we saw some themes that came out through the responses. And one of the big themes is what I just mentioned, all about engagement. And so as a group, I'll share with you that I think it was in our last week's planning session, or maybe the one before that, we were thinking, okay, what do we need to share about engagement? What do we think is the best way to talk about engagement? And one of my wise colleagues said, well, wait a minute. We should hear from the students. What do the students think is engaging? We can sit here as academics and talk about what we think it is, but really the bottom line is, what do our students think is important? So with that, I'm going to pass it on to some of our students. We have quite a few on the call with us today, and we're going to learn from them. What is their view? So I'm going to ask Priscilla Owusu-Mensah from KNUST in Ghana, and Ria, and I'm not sure if Naomi is on with us from the University of Nottingham, to share their experience. But I would ask participants, I'm hoping there are some students on the session with us today, if you could also share in the chat box while our two colleagues are sharing with us their experience. Share with us, what do you think has been engaging for the past year? So Priscilla, I believe you are up next.
Thank you so much, Sean. I hope I'm audible enough for everyone.
I can hear you well.
All right. Okay, so last year we had a webinar just like this. And I remember in my slides, I mentioned that we were very confused. We're wondering if this was possible, what was going to happen, what's the next step. We were just in a confusion galore, but eventually our faculty members initiated our Zoom classes. And so Zoom was the main platform that was used for COVID, what I call COVID era teaching, as well as a virtual classroom for assessments. So we had quizzes and our mid-semester examination all on this virtual platform that our school had put up. So do we classify, or as students moving from the classroom to a Zoom sort of class, do we classify this as active learning, or is it engaging enough for us? And a big yes. We'd say a big yes to that. So
Yay.
What is active learning? Yes. So what is active learning? Active learning is when both the students and the lecturer are both engaged in the process. So it's not just a lecturer teaching all the time, but the students is also involved in the learning process. So that is why we classified it all. After talking to a couple of my friends, we came to this conclusion. We're like, yeah, this was very active or engaging for us, because for once we felt more confident to ask questions and share ideas on the Zoom platform as compared to maybe when we're in class. Because I guess some people felt a little intimidated by, okay, this person is coming to class, I can't ask a question, I'm shy of this person, ABCD reasons. But but when we had the Zoom initiated, we were able to learn our comfort zones. And so we were more involved in the learning process as compared to when we were sitting in the classrooms. And also also due to the quick assessment tools, that the Zoom polls and the chat box and videos that were, the lecturer could just easily put up a video. Say, okay, let's learn from this video. And then what did you learn from the video? As compared to if we're in class, we now have to go and look for this and that before we can just watch the video. So it was a very engaging, it's very engaging and very fun for us. And we still uphold the Zoom sessions. Even though sometimes we go for face-to-face classrooms, we sometimes tell the lecturer, oh, can this class be on Zoom? Because, we prefer the Zoom. We prefer the Zoom classes to the in-person classes. So we really appreciate the effort they put in to make this possible for us. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. That's so interesting that Zoom made you all feel more comfortable and that you were able to share more. I'm sure that really greatly contributed to your learning.
Exactly, it did. Even in our grades, yeah.
Yeah, nice, even better. All right. Thank you. So next, let's go a little north geographically up to the University of Nottingham. And I believe we have Ria Duja and Naomi Ilori on the line with us. Oh, there. Oh,
Hi.
You're in the same room.
Yeah, we live together.
Nice.
So yeah, we're Ria and Naomi from Nottingham. So PLM, one of the modules we do is usually very interactive and in person. So moving online for the majority of the year was difficult, but they've done really well. So they delivered a lot of the material by pre-recorded videos and podcasts and made interactive workshop packages that we'd work at home at our own pace. A majority of the learning was delivered through a software called Xerti. So they would make Xerti packages, and that contained mini videos that they recorded with information, resources for further reading, built-in quizzes, and then activities to complete with peers, whether it's if you live with them or like on Teams. We were also taught how to make Xerti packages. So Naomi and I actually created one to create interactive material for our peers, as well as first-year students in our cohort. And then each teaching week would then end with a Q&A on Microsoft Teams. So our module leaders would lead a Q&A to cover any information that we didn't understand in the packages that they would put up at the beginning of the week. And that was really good because then we had direct interaction with our academics, and anything, because going online is difficult because when you have questions, you don't necessarily go up to the lecturer at the end of your lecture. So to be able to ask questions live and unmute yourself and talk to them directly on Teams is really useful.
And as a PLM committee, we came up with ideas on how academics across boards can make their digital sessions more interactive. So our solutions included the use of online interactive Q&A platforms like Padlet, which is what we use, and it can be easily accessed by academics and students and updated regularly. And another solution would be the utilization of one-on-one communication with academics. So we use Teams chat, which is more, it was better than using emails because we got faster replies and a lot more engagement, and it was like easier for the students to interact, easier than emails, I guess. And yeah, that's all I have to say.
Wow. Well, thank you so much to both of you. And it's so fun to see you guys together in the same room. So I have to tell you, Nottingham, you guys are the masters of technology platform. I have a list of new things I need to search out. I'd heard of Padlet before, but I haven't used it. Xerti, I've never heard of, so I need to look that up. So I'm joining right along with everyone else, learning new things. And then I also really liked the idea that you're using Microsoft Teams as essentially, I think what we call in the US, office hours. I mean, you're right. We don't get to come up to the professor at the end. So that's a great way for us all to do that. And I'm glad you guys found that helpful. So thank you so much for sharing. And we look forward to hearing from you or some of your colleagues a few slides down. So like I said, a big thank you to all of our students. And they shared with us a lot of word for the day is wisdom about interaction and so on. And I bet one of their favorite things as a student is getting their clinical skills assessed. So with that was quite a bit of what we hear from our faculty members, our academics. So we're going to dive a little bit more into that. And with that, I'm going to pass the mic over to what I'm affectionately calling my dream team of Doctors Vivian Mack, Sarah Schooler, and Rebecca Moles, and have them talk to you a little bit about OSCEs, or Objective Structured Clinical Exams. So we're going to start off with a polling feature, and I think it should be ready. So I guess, Viv, do you want to kind of share a little bit about this?
Sure. Thanks, Sean. If you don't mind just showing the responses on the screen.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. So for those of you who have never used Poll Everywhere, I'm not too sure why, Sean, but the link is not showing on the screen. There you go. Let's just do that first then.
Yeah. It was when
so if you're
I clicked the
using
show response.
Yeah, so if you're using your mobile or your web laptops, you can just go to pollev.com/, and Sean Gleason, 184. And there is a question there, in one word, what's the greatest challenge you face with objective structured clinical examination? So if you've not heard of OSCEs before, they're basically clinical skills assessments. So Sarah, Rebecca, and myself, we've presented before a year ago about OSCEs and different ways of doing these assessments. But doing so, we also found some challenges ourselves, and we'll share with you some of those challenges as well. But we thought we'd like to hear from you in one word. What's the greatest challenge you face when you're sort of conducting OSCEs in the last year, or in general? And then we'll have a discussion with Beck and also Sarah.
So I see 3 results. We'll wait a little bit more.
So maybe while we wait for the responses, maybe Sarah, do you want to maybe share a little bit about some of the work you've done comparing, I guess, Zoom OSCEs versus some of the usual face-to-face OSCEs that you've done at your institution?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So we actually did a little bit of data grabbing. So we looked at our cohort of students from 2019 on competency-based communication assessments in the online platform. So back in 2019, that was before, the whole world collapsed. And that was when everything was really in person. And then we also looked at our students from the 2020 class, and we moved everything virtually. And this was basically high stakes competency communication based exams where they had standardized patients on the other end, whether in 2019 it was in person or whether it was virtually in 2020. And we really looked at their scores. We looked overall how they did. And then one of the really important things that we wanted to look at was also looking at those soft skills. So were they still able to establish trust well? Were they still able to really show empathy? Did they have good, nonverbal sort of competencies, within the virtual realm? And really what we found is that across the board, our students did really well. Actually, our 2020 cohort actually did a little bit better than 2019. The effect sizes were extremely small, so we really look at it as across the board, they really did very similar. And so, what we've kind of taken from this is we think that there's definitely a place for these kind of virtual assessments in, competency, in OSCEs, all those things. And then we'll also, I know Viv will talk about this a little bit as well, but we have also found that along with that, we think there's also still really a large place for having those things in person and still having that in-person interaction, especially from a professionalism standpoint, also from connecting with patients. We think that really it's kind of a dual skill set and that both of those things should really be emphasized. So that's kind of what we've been pulling from things.
Thanks, Sarah. So what we can see on the screen, which is a nice word cloud, and we're trying to use Poll Everywhere. And for those of you who've never used Poll Everywhere, it's something for you to explore as well. And we use it in our classes. And we can see that, I guess, the main big word that's coming up is authenticity, logistics and technology. Maybe, Beck, do you want to talk a little bit about authenticity with some of the Zoom OSCEs you've done as well?
Sure. So I think thank you for everyone to be participating in this, and it's fantastic. And, I think the take-home message for all of us is it is possible to do. Is it the best? Look, I don't know. Obviously, in an ideal world, we'd love to be face-to-face, I think, and that there's trade-offs. But one of the interesting things, and a big shout out to Ruth Edwards from the UK, who answered the questionnaire beforehand as well, is that perhaps there's an opportunity to increase some of that person-centered care. And, there may be opportunities to actually have real patients come into our classroom through the Zoom platform that would have been a little bit more difficult, that they had to travel and find parking and get into campus and work out which classrooms to be in. So you still can have some authenticity, But there's always trade-offs. So there will be times where, so I had to run some first aid classes where we had to get students to administer asthma first aid. And in a classroom environment, they'd pick up a spacer device, you know, the metered dose inhaler. And while they were on Zoom, they were using props that they had in their own household, whether that be a drink bottle and a pencil. And so it wasn't ideal. So there's trade-offs. You can have authentic patients still present via Zoom, which is excellent. And maybe there's more opportunities to have other people come into the virtual classroom than there would be face-to-face because of, you know, just the ease of them being able to do it at home. But the trade-offs are where you have to do physical skills, and that, you know, can be challenging. So I'm not sure if that answered your question, Viv, but that's my spiel.
Yeah, I think that sounds great. And then just before we move on to the next bit, around logistics and technology, and also touching on the authenticity component, doing stuff over Zoom, like what Sarah is saying, you know, it's great. There's certain areas that it could work, but it doesn't necessarily replace all the face-to-face clinical assessments and assessment of the skills. Definitely. And one of the stories that I've got is, you know, the students have been doing stuff over Zoom. And as we all know, we've been wearing a professional attire in the top and up to the waist because you're kind of sitting down all the time. And we had students come back to campus to do face-to-face activities. And they thought that was normal to wear professional attire in the top and stopped up to the waist. And then everything else wasn't professional. So I think sometimes this re-normalizing what coming to campus is going to be like and how real life authentic assessments should be like. It's like teaching them to walk again, and something to consider whenever you get your students back on campus in a way. And logistics and technology, it's definitely difficult to do things over Zoom, but we've learned over time. And I think, you know, Sarah and a few others have also published, you know, the papers around how you can do this. And there's a lot of papers out around doing OSCEs, whether it's in the pharmacy field or nursing or medical field, how they've converted it to Zoom OSCE. So it's worth exploring that as well. But it's interesting to see, I guess most people do find authentic assessments is one of the greatest challenge and something that we're all always going to learn from each other. So I think back to you, Sean, for the next bit.
All right. See, that's why I call you guys my dream team. Thank you guys for sharing all of that really wonderful experience. And thank you to Viv for sharing Pull Everywhere and this idea of a word cloud. I think it really shows us all what we're going through so nicely. And I love all the colors. So again, those are your experts who were sharing with you. The next slide, I'm just going to go over real quickly. And I just wanted to touch on, you know, we talk about remote and online education. And up until COVID, I think a lot of what we were doing was online education. And then with COVID, we switched to a lot of remote, especially in doing some of this active learning session. But still, there are times and places when online or asynchronous education is still really valuable. And a few of us on the call, Dr. Kuroda and myself, we teach in programs that are for working professionals. And I'm sure some of you out there are teaching similar students. And so oftentimes the asynchronous part is really valuable. And it can also be valuable in what we call entry level or regular programs, for lack of a better word. And I just wanted to share that there is still a wide variety of ways that online or asynchronous education can really be very interactive. Some of the basic things are threaded discussion, and of course have it guided and facilitated. And I'm realizing I've got a threaded discussion going on in my class right now, and I need to get in there and share some thoughts, practice what I preach. There are a number of platforms of PowerPoint, ways to give presentations that can be interactive with students asking questions on the PowerPoint, with quizzes being embedded and so on. Doing things like peer teaching and assessment is a great way to get students engaged. Self-directed learning, we learned about how this online education really helps those independent thinkers. So we can do a lot of that. We can even do group projects. And I can tell you this group of faculty members and students and peers here learned that over the last several months, that we definitely made advantage of things like Google Docs, Google Slides, and others. You can do games. Gamification is a big thing, and other things. So I just wanted to just share that there's a lot that can be done to maintain interactivity and engagement, yet in an asynchronous manner. So the other thing that I want to move on to now is something that I actually saw in our word cloud. I saw collusion on there, and we did see quite a bit of reports of concerns about academic integrity and having moved to this environment. So I want to dive into that a little more deeply. And so we have another poll, and I'm not going to keep this one open quite as long because hopefully you guys are experts now with the technology. You text to the same numbers or the same website. And in one word, can you share with us what is the main challenge you have faced with academic integrity? Ooh, content loss. Interesting. Oh, I'm reacting as I'm seeing. I was seeing the false accusations part. That's something that's a real important thing for us all to be aware of. All right. Well, this is getting interesting, and I am going to, at this point, wow. Anyway, I'm sorry, I could sit here all day and watch this. I'm going at this point hand over the microphone to my colleague, Dr. Kurote from Howard University, to share his thoughts on academic integrity. And as I mentioned, Dr. Kurote teaches in a distance program for not only interlevel students, but also for professional students. And so he's got a lot of experience in both sides of the online world. So Dr. Kurote, did you want to share your thoughts on academic integrity, please?
Absolutely. And good morning, afternoon, evening. It's great to take part in this session today. I know I only have a few minutes. What I saw from that survey, collision and cheating were the one that were really echoed in large fonts. And I think that is true, but what the academic dishonesty is nothing new to anyone who has taught or currently teaching. What is different this time is the sheer volume of schools and programs that are offering exams online because of COVID-19 and the remote access and online teaching. For me, for my distance learning students, really nothing changed because they were doing all of that before COVID-19. But for my on-campus students, everything changed. So I think one way to tackle academic dishonesty is to promote academic integrity. And often when you talk to students, when they have committed infraction and you say, why did you do A and B? The answer is, well, I didn't know that was being dishonest. So understanding what academic dishonesty means from the student point of view is very important. So for that, there has to be a way to deliver that message to students on and off campus. And a way to do that, you have to embed that into your curriculum instruction. You need to have faculty student support. And of course, your assessment evaluation also have to take into consideration what are the best ways to prevent academic dishonesty? What are the best ways to educate students about academic integrity? And what are some of the consequences of that? And I think this areas, they're very extensive, but I don't have much time to discuss it. But basically, at this time, what I would like for everyone to take home as a message is that this is really safeguarding academic integrity, it involves students, faculty, administrators, curriculum, and of course, assessment evaluation, all of that put together.
Wow. Thank you so much. I really like that kind of turning the story around to really promoting the positive aspect of it, the academic integrity. And I share with you that experience. We have an online module that we provide to students, and we've realized over the past year that that's something we need to really even talk about even more. Sure, we require it, but it's something that needs to be part of our regular discussion even more. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah. So now, the next part of our big challenges over the past year has been, in the US, we call it experiential education, clinical placements, work placement, I think was another term I learned, internships. And so with that, I'm going to pass the mic over to Dr. Jamila Jordan, also from Howard University, who is the director of experiential programs there, to really share her thoughts or lead us in an exploration of that. Jamila?
Yes, good morning. I guess go to the next slide so I can see.
Yeah, so this is another poll. Do you want to share with it what the question is, Jamila?
Yes, I know that when we talk about the last year, it was a lot of different challenges that we've had, and we can all really speak on that. But I wanted to really go into some of the highlights, because one of the things that I think that this pandemic has really opened up is new opportunities for our students in their experiential or in their rotations. So I kind of wanted to see what the audience felt were some of the highlights, especially when we talk about experiential education and clinical placement. What were some of the things that you learned? What were some of the things that went well? Just kind of get that from the audience.
Look at that big one in the middle.
Excellent, yes. And that has definitely been big. I know that's been a conversation with a lot of our pharmacy practice sites in terms of using our pharmacists and pharmacy students, more importantly, with the vaccination effort. So we're definitely excited to see the students being able to take part in working through in combating this pandemic.
Wow. All right. Well,
yep.
Jamila, are there any final words in the interest of time? And I know you're going to share some more expertise with us down the session a little bit. Any final words you want to share about these findings?
It's interesting and not surprising. Like I said, it was definitely a challenging year, but having, I see the word real responsibility, having students be able to step into a pandemic, a real life healthcare emergency, healthcare situation, really, I think shows the need for pharmacists, and really got our students the opportunity to learn and grow in such a wide variety of experiences. So I think in a lot of ways, the pandemic really opened up our eyes and opened up different opportunities for our students.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And thank you to all of you for sharing that. It's so gratifying to see all the vaccination efforts that go on and that have gone on. And then, I can't help but notice there is that word insufficient. And there are some cases where this situation did lead to something, not as good as we would have normally done. So we need to continue to think about that. And I know you've got the expertise to share with us some more ideas on that. So now thank you, Dr. Jordan. And so now let's move on back to our students. We know amazing work has been done from pretty much all of the institutions who are shared joining us today on this session. But we have two examples that really have done some amazing things with our student groups. And so I want to hand the microphone over to our colleagues, our students at the University of Nottingham, so they can share briefly some of what they have done there. And so I'm not sure, is it Melissa maybe? And
hi, yeah, no, so my name's Ella.
Ella, good, thank you.
All right.
So
can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so my name's Ella, and I think it says on the slide, I'm the chair of this committee, the Student Academic Committee that this is all about. So as was mentioned earlier by Naomi and Ria, that this module, the Pharmacy Leadership and Management module, it's a 40 credit year-long final year module, and this year, founded by an academic supervisor and myself, a committee was founded to ensure that feedback was reaching the team, especially during the changes with online learning, as obviously the module became pretty much online because of COVID. So the idea came about from a discussion in one of our meetings, and we were sort of expressing frustrations in terms of issues with feedback and how hard students feel it is to get their voices and opinions heard. And this was really pertinent here. And because this module's got a huge space for student interaction and engagement, so we wanted to provide a platform to allow the students to work with the academics to produce learning for the students, as this was really clear that was sort of necessary, especially during COVID. And we were determined to focus on feedback and how students can be involved in making a key difference to their learning and putting in place mechanisms of doing that. So I'm going to pass on now to Shira, who's going to explain a bit more about that.
All right. Thank you, Shira. Or thank you,
I think
Ella.
actually Melissa's going to go next, and then I'm going to be talking about the impact.
Okay. And if you could do so pretty briefly.
Yeah, so
that'd be
I'm
great.
going to explain what the committee has done. So the committee basically supports the students who are both in person as well as remote or distant learning to meet the learning outcomes. We are technically like the middle party that we relay students' feedback and raise concerns upwards to the team, and then vice versa back downwards to the students. And upon those feedbacks, we make decisions that steer the module in the direction that best helps the students to learn, as well as lessen the burdens of the students. So now I'm going to pass to Shira.
Thank you.
Okay, so in terms of the impact, students have been really empowered by having this direct link with the academics, and academics running ideas by the committee allowed for us to give our opinions and ideas before they were actually pursued, which gave the student community a much greater sense of voice and ownership. And working together with the academics, identifying issues and suggesting solutions directly links to our future as pharmacists, where we'll have to use skills like this daily. So being involved in shaping the future of the PLM module has allowed adaptation of the module and its objectives over time, and it's allowed us to create a continuous cycle of auditing and improving the management of the module. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, you all. The thing I love about that is it's real-time feedback. I know at our school we do it at the end of the semester, and one of the the bummers of that, or at least I shouldn't speak for Dr. Schooler. Maybe they probably are doing it within their classes real time. But the way that when we do it at the end of the semester, the bummer is that, yeah, we get feedback, but then the students don't get to see it because they've moved on to the next year. So this real time committee is really amazing. So, in the interest of time, I'm going to skip this polling. But it's really important. But the reason I'm doing that is I know I've got some really amazing stuff moving on where our colleagues from Monash University are going to tell us what they've been doing about the important topic of student well-being. So I believe it's Anisha, or no, it's Nell. Could you please share with us the Monash PIES program?
Thank you so much, Sean. So on our end, we really saw the result of the move to online teaching and remote teaching, I guess. A lot of students experience a loss of their support networks, whether that be family or friends. And as we've been discussing in this seminar, lots of challenges with remote learning. With international students in particular, especially those that weren't able to get back home, they would have experienced a significant amount of homesickness due to restrictions with travel and also uncertainty with the duration of the pandemic. And so it's important to keep in mind that all students, regardless of if they were onshore or offshore, would have experienced seclusion, baseline anxiety, feelings of loneliness, and depression in these challenging times. So in response to some of these issues, during the pandemic, a team of academics at Monash University, which included Dr. Betty Exentaris and Dr. Suzanne Califf and myself, formed a support group for our international students, which we called PIES. And our goal really was to develop and implement an inclusive campus community environment for these students. And we had 3 areas of focus: communication, social and networking, and well-being. And the program included a series of international student engagement activities, and you can see some of the photos of the students that came along to these sessions. We also had a quarterly newsletter and a central email, which was a unique port of call for academic support. So I really want to hand over to one of our international students, Yan Wang, who regularly joined our PIES events from Shanghai in China. And she'd really love to share her experience with you. So over to you, Yan.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I hope others noticed on the screen before that you guys had a resilience lead and an empathy lead among your faculty. How cool is that? And how important?
Definitely.
So yeah, so Yan, share with us your experience with PIES.
Yeah, thank you, Neil. Hello, everyone. My name is Yan. So as an international student, I'm not necessarily isolated from in my home like a quarantine, but I'm indeed isolated from the campus community. So with everything moved online, it feels like every social interactions become only colored box on Zoom and profile photos on Facebook. I don't really know my other classmates and lecturers after 2 years of online calls. This is not exactly ideal when you are looking for someone to talk to and build connections. Yeah, so it all began when I saw an email from PIES for an afternoon tea session, and I wasn't having the best day of my week. So I went there and see if I can get a cup of hot chocolate. So it surprised me when I was welcomed in a very encouraged way. It was, I was a little bit nervous because I was talking to 2 of my lecturers who taught me. And then, but then I realized that the conversation was very relaxing, and there was other students who were stuck overseas like me. I would never meet them if it's not for PIES. And when I came again for the second session, I was surprisingly found that every member remembered my nickname. So I felt I have been very valued as a part of this community. And the effort and the positivity in each session that makes me come back once and once more. And then during online classes, we live from Monday to Friday, attend all the classes and submit all the assignments. And then another Monday begins. On campus, we have friends who undergo the same loop with you. So this makes the whole thing more interesting. Since we have to do it alone at home, attending PIES session was something that's fun, that's something fun that prevents me from losing my motivation in learning. I spend time with the students and the organizers in one session, and my stress were all relieved. I can put my energy into all the works and looking forward to next week's session. We once made fortune cookie together. I like to say that fortune cookie is not a typical Chinese food, but PIES session really makes me feel like going home. Thank you.
Nice. I have a quick question for you. How often did these sessions take place?
Once per week.
Once
so
per week.
Weekly session. Yes.
Wow.
Every Thursday. Thursday is
that's
my favorite
amazing.
Day. Yes.
All right. Well, kudos to Monash University for the PIES, and then also to our colleagues at the University of Nottingham, where the students were leading their feedback too. So really some amazing work. So with that, I am going to pass it back to Dr. Schneider to move us forward.
So I heard some wonderful stories about what we wanted to know a year ago and how we might overcome some of the challenges if we had more knowledge or better skills in various areas. But the thing is, the pandemic is not over, and we're all in different countries around the world at different stages of opening up, or even in Australia, we're just recently locked down again. In Melbourne, apologies to my Monash colleagues. And what we see here is that this isn't going to go away. We're not necessarily going to have COVID-19 eliminated, and there might be a new normal. The question is, what does it look like? So we asked the community and also our panelists, what do we still want or need to know moving forward? So I'd like to hand over to, again, as you can tell, there's a theme here of connection and hearing from our students. So I'd like to hand over to Ella. I should say graduated now, but her experience as a student during COVID-19, what do we wish our faculty knew about remote or online education?
Thank you so much, Carl. All right, so during at the start of the COVID-19, there were a lot of things. Like looking back right now, I really do wish that our faculty understood a lot of things, of which one of them is familiarizing students with online applications. Prior to the pandemic, we didn't know a whole lot about most of us were not even we didn't even know how to use a lot, aside having to do most of our assignments on typing and those stuff. We didn't know how to use a lot of online applications, and that had a toll on us, because when it's time for classes, we had a lot of difficulties trying to get acquainted with it, which drags the whole classes. So that's the very first one, helping students familiarize themselves with online applications. Then another one is improving quality and great communication and interactions between students and faculty members. As I stated earlier, we saw this really affected some of us, and I think moving forward, I think it's something that each faculty should actually try as much as possible to create that environment, so that faculty members together with the students and all of that would also have that communication and that interaction existing between them. Also, another one was then some of the limitations that students had. There was a need for the faculty to also be aware of the various limitations that students had. I mean, there were some things that we just couldn't get hold of, or we couldn't have control of, which one of them was a learning space in our homes. We are so used to going to the libraries, going to classrooms to learn in school, but right now we couldn't go out, so we houses together with limited part of the world. Sometimes we couldn't. Internet issues was always
Ella, you're breaking up. Maybe you turn your video off.
So we had that limitation, and also cares, right? The problems and challenges that their mental health, such as issues that have to do with paying bills, having to cater for some students also had to cater for families and all of that. Those were one of the issues. And also, I also wish that faculty also knew the bad aspects of always being online, which was the cyber crimes. So if there was a way the faculty could have actually prevented cyber crimes and ensure that there's security even whilst using the internet. And also the last one was to be able to choose what content we as students could get used to, or that we could have access to, that was very much related to our future career. So this is not just them, but it's not limitless. We had a whole lot of issues. But I think for me, what amidst all of this, and one thing that was very important was that of quality and quality communication and interaction between students and faculty members. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And your insights remind me of one of those old sayings that before we learn, we need to learn how to learn. And with this new mode of learning of remote and online education, it's so important to familiarize students in how to learn in these new modes. So if we can move on to the next slide, I would like to hear from another panelist from Nigeria, Ikwebom Imoyoho from YPG, who will briefly talk to us about striking a balance about learning in work.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ikwebom, and I'm the YPG chairperson of project. So I'll take us briefly through the Nigerian perspective, what happened during COVID-19 and how we got to, adapt to the new normal. Now, the whole COVID started and everybody went on lockdown, and it wasn't really the same way as it's applicable to other countries, because Nigeria can't really tolerate the lockdown in terms of economic situations and the fact that everybody still needs to go out and move around and do other stuff. So this brought in a flexibility in terms of working and learning for most young pharmacists who worked in maybe community pharmacies or hospitals and still had to go into school for maybe masters in any form of learning. So the major thing was that they had to bring in some form of flexibility in terms of agreement with lecturers and class. So then you would have maybe a class of maybe 20 master's students who would agree to scheduling their classes when they are most comfortable. So they would agree on a time. And this really made everybody available. And this improved interactions between most of the students and the lecturers, because everybody's on a small box on the screen, so you can easily call on somebody, say Carl or Sean, and then talk to them. These are people where in normal days you may not really be able to catch up with them in classes or really interact with them as much as you would want to. So then it warranted a lot of convenience and more comfortable learning experience, because they just need to come up with a time that they're most comfortable with. Could be like an hour from work. You just come in, have like a 1 hour, 2 hour session, and then you get to go about your activity. So it made a lot of sense, because there you can allow some time to be at work and then just squeeze in some time to have your lectures. And then if there's an exam, you have it online. So it makes everything easier. So the eye opener here was that learning seems to be easier considering the environment. Let me take the University of Lagos, for instance. Lagos is one of the most popular cities in Nigeria. So there needs to be a lot of inconvenience in terms of moving from home to work and from work to school. So this made everything a lot easier for most of the master's students and most of other professional development, which they didn't have to go to class to attend them. So there's more convenient time for everyone and availability and a new way of imparting knowledge. So most of the drawbacks, which is very, very applicable in this part of the world, is high cost of internet service, where most of the students would have to, get some form of beta plan from any network provider and get to have access to the internet. So that's personal connection could be most of the issues, and then more power as well for most of their devices. There is really not so much of that around here. And then insufficient bandwidth to accommodate multiple sessions on the university online platforms. Now, when the COVID kicked in, most federal universities were tasked with the responsibility of coming up with platforms. It's like University of Nottingham mentioned a couple of platforms utilized in that part of the world. So here, most universities had to, leverage on most of the software engineers around to make a platform that would be obtainable, that would be applicable for most students to help with the online learning experience. So most of the problems they have is multiple faculties want to have their classes at once, and that could maybe impede the other learning experience because the bandwidth may not be large enough to accommodate everybody at a time. But basically, this is the area which there was an issue which can most definitely be resolved. So in terms of this, I feel in the future, this would be improved upon, and we are faced with a new normal in terms of the COVID-19, and we believe that definitely there will be an improvement on that part. So on the part of the case study for this, I want to send a shout out to Amin Egoa, a student and chemist from Nigeria, who mentioned the importance of online professional development, along with accessibility to new info. And in this part, we still have quite a number of inequalities to address in education. We hope that the future will be better. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ikwebom. And I think that your experiences are shared on the other side of the planet. We will hear briefly from Anisha, who will tell us from Anisha.
Hi.
Let me go back here.
Back one, please.
Yeah.
Who will tell us about how to move forward.
Sorry about that. There we go.
Right. Good evening, everyone. Hello from Malaysia. So it's I'm grateful to be able to give a regional experience of how we dealt with remote learning over the last 16 months in Malaysia. And really, over the last 16 months, we've been on various stages of lockdown. So our students really haven't had the chance to come back onto campus at all for any face-to-face sessions. So for some of our students, they actually have not even met a single person in their class face-to-face as of yet. So what we have learned from all of this really is future-proofing to move forward is that firstly, a lot of our students have mentioned that they would really have preferred to have more mental health support services. I think at this stage in time, we don't really have very structured mental health support services for students. And having that would really be very good for them because a lot of them have struggled with feelings of isolation, depression, anxiety. And as we have seen shared from some of the students in this session itself, they really have mentioned just how important it has been to receive that additional source of support from the higher education institutions. And that really leads on to the fact that we really need to think about different ways really and more inclusive ways of implementing better pastoral support in higher education. I think we've seen from the way Nottingham structured their online learning for the students, or the fact that Monash Australia introduced this amazing PIES program, that students really get a lot out of continued engagement, a lot out of consistent communication, and just having their lecturers there to provide additional support, more guided sessions, whether educational or non-educational, really just gives them so much more reassurance, especially in this particular pandemic where everyone's just feeling very, very isolated. A lot of my students mentioned that they would really prefer smaller group teaching sessions. In Malaysia, we're quite shy, so switching on our cameras is a very big deal for us. So they do feel a lot more comfortable in smaller sessions, as well as they would really appreciate shorter teaching sessions too, because it's a lot easier for them to grasp learning. And I think that's something that we've tried to do by creating shorter chunked videos for lecture sessions. So they really have appreciated that, because an overwhelming sort of challenge that they're facing is just Zoom fatigue, screen fatigue. I think we're all suffering from that. So for them, just having maybe a daily screen time limit, they would really appreciate that as well. So that's something to think about going forward. How are we going to schedule classes? How are we going to timetable classes so it just doesn't get too much for them? One thing that we really struggled with here is being able to introduce placement learning for students, because every time I think we tried to do that, we just went back into another lockdown. The COVID virus surged, it got deadlier, it got more unsafe. So our students have really suffered from not really being able to go out into experiential learning. I know that's something that we touched a little earlier. So maybe it's time for us to think about another way to introduce this to our students. If they can't really be in the hospitals because it's unsafe, safe, they're not vaccinated. Maybe we need to think about more virtual reality formats for them to experience this. So that could be something that we really need to think about moving forward. Finally is embracing new ways of teaching. I think we've seen from this session alone, polling keeps us very engaged. Using gamification sources, I love to use Kahoot with my students. They really engage with that very well. More animation softwares. I think Vivian and I have dabbled with Powtoon, and students do enjoy that nice sort of animated videos that come along with it. Thinking about using different exciting learning interfaces. So I've used Guru Producer, and my students really enjoy that. I use that for the interprofessional education session for medical and pharmacy students, and they really engage with that very well. So thinking about different ways to consider class activities and assessment styles that involve perhaps more new methods, more engaging methods, and definitely more opportunities for socialization. Overall, what students really said is they would love to socialize a lot more because everyone's isolated. Everyone's been sitting in a bedroom for 16 months. We really want to have more face-to-face time. So that's all for me. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to present this perspective.
Carl,
I've been just reading the chat.
Yeah.
That's been a very, very insightful initiative. You captured within a nutshell of so many tips that I think people are going to be taking away after this webinar. Over to you, Sean.
Yeah, thank you. I agree with everything you said. So many wonderful points there, including, and I think, Carl, you mentioned this, the cultural differences among our groups of students, very important. So now, in the interest of time, we're going to move through these next sets of slides. I'm just going to kind of go through them really quickly. We did get some wonderful faculty results of what do we need to know moving forward. Better presentation skills, different platforms, and different approaches. And we've talked about chunking. I know Anisha talked about, and that was also mentioned in the chat. We did hear a little bit about simulation and virtual reality, other ways to get this experiential learning while we're in lockdown. And we were going to have, I'm sorry, I'm just going to keep talking from here on out. I'm learning that my mouse controls more than I realize it does. We were going to have a lot about simulation here, and I'm just going to hopefully zoom past it. And then, I am sorry, it's stuck here. What I'm going to move to instead, because I think we're all familiar with some sorts of simulated learning, and Monash University with My Dispense has really helped us all out with that. And there are some other methods there, but one of the other questions that we've had is how to do labs remotely. So Nell, if you could just tell us really in a few seconds, less than a minute, some tips for presenting labs remotely. I think that'll just give us some perspective, and I would ask that participants, if you have questions, to reach out to her directly.
No worries, thanks, Sean. I'll keep this very short. So I think a main challenge was how do we convert something that's done completely in a laboratory, whether that's with solutions or animals or drugs or equipment, into a worthwhile, authentic experience, which we touched on with OSCEs earlier. So this, and probably on your end, has forced us to think about the purpose of the activity. And was it to demonstrate problem solving, or was it to demonstrate analytical skills, technical skills, or maybe all of the above? And also alongside, how could we get students to demonstrate their decision-making skills? So what I've got there on the slide, it was just one case scenario at Monash where students were able to log in remotely through Monash Teams and take charge of the HPLC machines in the laboratory. And we had teaching staff doing the physical aspects of the lab in class, but we really could get the students to show us their decision-making skills and have them participate and develop some practical remote skills. So just again, like I said, one example.
Wow. Oh, I'm speechless on that. That's amazing. Thank you. As I was stumbling through a few seconds ago, several seconds ago, and you know what? I'm doing it again. We're going to just go past the simulated learning in the interest of time. And then we have heard, I'm sorry, you guys. Before we get to experiential learning, we've heard a lot about different ways that we've been doing education to date, but we're all, as we've been hearing along the way, in different spots with the pandemic and where we are with education. So one of a big theme that we got throughout the responses was, what do we do moving forward? How much do we keep remote? What do we do online? What is the best way to deliver our hybrid education? And so, you know, we're all in different spots right now. And I'm just curious what you guys are planning on doing, or maybe you don't know yet, but if you could just really quickly respond to the best of your ability to this question of what will the new classroom look like? What should we all start to really be prepared to deliver? This one is not a word cloud. I think it'll end up being, I'm going to do the show responses. It should end up being a, as you see, a bar graph here. Interesting. I'm not sure if I can't see right now how many responses are here to date, but so looks like a lot of us are still planning on doing some remote, and I'm wondering if, and maybe you guys could share this in the chat, is that due to still some lockdown? Is that just what you plan on doing for the long term? The other one that is gaining popularity is a term I actually learned from Dr. Schneider the other day, is high flex, a large level of student choice, whether that be in how they get their content, whether that be remote, online, or face-to-face. And I know at the University of Colorado, as we were planning what we were going to be doing for the coming semester, that was kind of dabbled about, like, well, maybe we should give students a choice. Do they want remote or online? In the end, we're going mostly live in our fall semester, September semester. But it looks like a lot of remote is still going to be the way moving forward, regardless of what it is. That you can see there is a mix of everything. And it looks like the one that did not get any answer was a full face-to-face. So there we have it. We're going to be doing a lot of this for the long term. So as we think about moving forward, some curricular design questions are still out there, and there's a lot for us to think about. I think we've learned a lot in this session today of, you know, really what needs to be face-to-face versus what can be online. Is it, you know, application-based, and even application-based can some be remote versus online? Is it knowledge-based? Some material can be really more guided, self-directed. Where will our clinical placements go? Do they go in blocks at the, you know, say at the end of a semester, or are they interspersed or threaded throughout? Those are some things we can consider, and those are some big logistic things. Flexibility. How do we schedule these courses? Do we do it over a whole semester? Do we do it in blocks? Are they course sizes, smaller groups we heard about? We can also think about course sizes in credit hours that allow us to be a little bit more flexible. Student choice. We heard about where students wanted to have content that was directly related to their career. So you know what, maybe there are ways we can do that, and online is a great way to provide that variety, kind of a what we call a choose your own adventure. And then, like I said earlier, high flex, a lot of choice can be had there. And these are all things I think we'll all gain more experience with as time goes on, and hopefully we'll be able to share more with each other. So with that, one of the important things is, how do we do this clinical placement? So Dr. Jordan, did you want to share some of your thoughts on that?
Yes, and I know in the interest of time, I'll keep it brief. Obviously, COVID-19 is is still here, and where you're at in the world and the country would dictate a lot of where you place your student and how you place your students. And we're still dealing with the fact that there are still a lot of pharmacy practice sites that are closed or severely restricted to our students. So then what are we going to have to do? One of the previous speakers mentioned having a virtual or simulated pharmacy practice experience, if that's allowed in your locality or your nation. There are also some pharmacy practice experiences that may have changed their model and may not be able to take on students. For example, if you are an office-based experience, maybe industry, managed care, things of that nature, you may have gone fully virtual due to the pandemic for your employees, and then may not be able to take on students because you have proprietary software that the students may not have access to. So again, this may limit some of the students' choices when we look at pharmacy placement. Also, we have to have the conversation of vaccination. Again, depending on the country and localities, even the university, are we requiring students to get vaccinated? As the pharmacy practice site requiring vaccination for the students? And again, how does that look, and how do we move forward with placing students at their sites that do require vaccinations?
Wow. Yeah. The vaccination question is a very real life question that we're dealing with right now in real time. And then thank you for sharing all of the different ways that we can do rotations. I think you're probably experiencing the same thing. There's a lot that now with telehealth and everything that, you know what, some of these rotations are going to be remote from here on out. So
definitely
a lot of opportunity. And so with that, I'm going to move on to some silver linings, or what are some opportunities that have been gained through this. I think we've all heard that there has been a lot of good that has come from it. I would ask that just in the interest of time, if you could just share in the chat some positive things that have happened with you. And then while you're doing that, I'm going to ask Dr. Daniel Moraga to share an opportunity that came about for the University of Valparaiso. And Dr. Moraga, just take it away.
Yeah.
Briefly.
Hi, Sean, and hi, everybody. I know, briefly, will be briefly. So the Global Virtual Exchange Initiative, it's a grant opportunity that came from the University of Texas. And the whole thing is this. We have a team of really young professors and people that was more seasoned about teaching and about writing skills. So we create, we use this grant that allows different universities to collaborate to create a new course that can be delivered online. So it was like the perfect timing for the COVID situation. We applied, we were awarded with the grant, and we create, it's different than the regular, hey, share with me the link of your class and I will share the link of my class, and that's it. We create a whole syllabus together as a team. So what is the objective of this whole class? If you can go to the next slide. The whole objective is that we created class that show students in the PhD programs and the master's programs how to write efficiently using digital tools, because the challenge was how we keep training our students out of the lab. So to do that, we create a class that has this Hugh Smythe and Bill Williams, experts on writing and editors of two important research journals, and then our teams of these like young professors that were experts on these different open source softwares that you can use to train students how to write, train students how to make their own figures and tables, graphical abstracts, all that in one package. So actually, to share with you, I will put the name of those open source tools in the chat so you can actually learn from that, and maybe you will be interested on this. I try to be really brief. That's it, Sean. Hopefully that helps.
Yeah, that's a big help. I think the take home for this is we can reach out to each other and truly share, as you all have done, share your classes with another university from, halfway across the world. So thank you for sharing with us that opportunity. And as he mentioned, you can certainly reach out to him and gain some more information about that. So with that, I'm going to pass the microphone back to Dr. Schneider to take us out in evaluating all of this and wrapping us up.
Look, it won't be me. I'm going to be quickly handing the hot mic over to Lamarcus Wingate, because I think that he has provided some really interesting material, what's happening at Howard University in US.
Okay, so in the interest of time, I will keep this brief, but I would like to really acknowledge a very insightful comment that was brought forth by Pushpinder Kumar Kari. And so he brought up, what is the importance of measuring the impact of teacher professional development on student learning outcomes. So if the teachers are able to gain more training in terms of delivering online assessment programs, does that make a difference in student learning outcomes? And so we really don't know the answer to that question. There's so much that we really don't know with assessment in terms of how this has impacted our student learning, but I will give a quick example of what we found out here at Howard. And so our students were generally comfortable with the online environment. So these are students who grew up with quite a bit of technology here in the US. So 89% felt comfortable with online educational teaching methods. So they felt comfortable being in an online classroom and learning in that fashion. However, when it came to test taking, it was a different story. So 85% of students thought that online proctoring contributed to them being nervous and thought that it negatively impacted their testing performance. And 85% said that a lack of scratch paper, which they could normally use doing face-to-face tests, might actually impact their performance as well too, in terms of being able to write down notes. Also, they said that they were nervous about being flagged, and other types of issues that go along with online testing, where we had online proctoring. So we actually carried out an analysis where we actually adjusted for all those factors, such as the students being nervous, the lack of scratch paper, familiarity with the online testing environment, and what do you think actually impacted their grades? And so after all of that, after adjusting for all of the online testing environment, what really impacted their grades was their prior GPA. So even though they were somewhat nervous about the online testing environment, at least here at Howard in the United States, then what really determined how well they were able to do in the course is how they had previously done throughout the curriculum, which was an indicator of how strong of a student they are. So we have several other good assessments which have been done in Brazil, which showed that students were really very nervous before the pandemic, but also even after the pandemic, there's even more depression. In Malaysia, the students really showed that they actually have a preference for in-person OSCEs as opposed to virtual OSCEs. In Saudi Arabia, they actually had very good internet connection. But here, with this particular experiential experience, what they really had a question with regards to, were they really able to have enough direct patient care experience? And some things you can only do in person, such as taking a blood pressure. And so in the interest of time, I'll leave you all with the ability to look at the other references at your own leisure. So they're there at the bottom. And I just really want to say thank you all to everyone. We really enjoyed you all, and thank you for taking the time to listen. So I'll pass it back to Carl at this time.
Yeah, so I just want to reiterate what Dr. Wingate just said. I think that what we see here is the importance of looking after our students in this challenging time. That connection is vital, because students can feel be at increased risk of depression or isolation. And you heard today from so many wonderful initiatives, such as the PIES program, just a drop-in session weekly that allows that student engagement to take place. And you've heard about the silver linings, that there's been opportunities that have come about, that unintended positive consequences of the situation of reaching out beyond your borders to both academics and students have been able to take part in international efforts or activities. So I want to wrap up by saying thank you. Thank you to the panelists. Thank you to the attendees. All the content in the end came from you all. This has been a celebration of community and the successful wins that you've achieved as you reached into across I've lost my train of thought, but you've had those celebrations of wins that you've achieved during this crisis or this pandemic. And I think I'll hand back to Dr. Sean Gleason to wrap up.
Well, I can't add much more to that other than thank you. And really, I think you said it best, Carl, that really, wow, what a celebration of us all and everything that we've done. A huge thank you to all of our panelists. I'm looking at the chat. The one group I really want to give a huge shout out to is our future, our students. You guys have really educated us all and really flipped the tables for us and taught us so much today. So thank you, as well as our young pharmacists, our recent graduates. You are also our future and taking us in a good path forward. And then to the 200 plus of you who shared your thoughts beforehand and provided us really the content for this session. Thank you. And again, thank you to our FIP colleagues who really, Mila deserves the shout out of the century along with Dahlia for working with us through all of this planning. There are future events from FIP Digital Events. If you want to see what they are, please join them at events.fip.org. Thank you again, everyone, and have a great evening, morning, day. I think I've covered it all. Thank you.